spooky followers. My name's Indigo Grimm, here with a brand new spooky review. And this one is going to be very special because it's actually about my favorite games, well, series, in my own opinion. But first things first, this is a spooky review because I'm going to be reviewing this YouTuber, Beauty and the Beast, while she talked about a legend based on this game that I'm here to talk about. And before you ask, yes, I've seen her multiple times on my spooky YouTube feed, and some of her stories are pretty great, and also based on mythology and all the way down. Now that is something I could sink my canines in. But I'm here to talk about one particular video that piqued my spooky interest. It is also about this favorite game of mine, and I'm still waiting for the remake for this game. And I'm still pissed that the one of the remakes is on Nintendo Switch 2 instead of 1. That's so fucking stupid. About adding one game on one system but not the other. Never mind. I'm here to talk about the one and only video from this lovely YouTuber called Hima Mansion. So yeah, this came out 1 month ago. And if I remember right, this mansion is actually the focus point on this game called Fatal Frame, based on a true story. This is actually one of my favorite games, and the game series itself, from Fatal Frame 1 all the way down to Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Waters. And these games are absolutely amazing, even for me, who is a Halloween spirit. Not only that, the fear factor is more scary than American horror. No offense, but some reason, Japanese, Chinese, or even Korea or Indian horror is more scarier, terrifying, and all the way down for this lovely Halloween spirit to sink her hunger of fear into. But the game itself, you actually fight ghosts, spirits, yokai, and other with a camera. And you have to be very precise on it. Also, try your best not to get fucked over. So yeah. But for this video itself is actually based on the first game, which by the way, I did not know this, but it's actually based on a true story or legend. So I'm here to learn about this legend about the first game of Fatal Frame and see how terrifying it is. So no more delays. Let's see how this legend goes by the Beauty and the Beast. Like usual, already got the video already up and running. So let's begin. In 3, 2, 1.
Hey beauties and beasts, welcome back to the show. Today I'm not feeling well, so my voice is a little nasal. But regardless of my physical condition, tonight's story is going to be fun, so please stay with me until the end. Okay, tonight I want to talk about a story that occupies a very strange space, somewhere between fiction and faith. And it started as a video game and then became an urban legend. And for a long time, people genuinely thought it was real. This is the story of Himuro Mansion, and if you've never heard of it, I'll give you the setup. In 2001, a survival horror game called Zero was released in Japan, and then it was renamed Fatal Frame for its release in North America in 2002.
Ooh.
And printed right on the cover were the words based on a true story. And those 5 words changed everything because suddenly this wasn't just a haunted house story. It was treated as truth, as if it were evidence, and people began to believe there was really a mansion in Japan, hidden away somewhere in the mountains where a family performed ritual sacrifices to keep something dark, something terrifying sealed away. And for years, no one could quite agree on whether or not that place actually existed. So tonight, we're going to walk through the legend surrounding Himuro Mansion, the ritual, the family, the deaths, and at the center of it all, the sacrificial lamb. Let's dive right in.
Really?
According to the lore in Fatal Frame, Himuro Mansion was in this incredibly isolated location, surrounded by forests so dense that very little light reached the ground. The kind of place where a dense fog settled and didn't lift for days, where even during the day you couldn't see clearly.
Interesting.
For generations, the Himuro family lived there in seclusion, not as caretakers of the land, but as caretakers of something far more dangerous. So, beneath the mansion was what they called the Hellgate, a boundary between worlds, between this world and that of the dead, a weak point at which malicious, vengeful spirits could cross over. Every 50 years, that boundary would weaken even further. And when it did, the family believed only one thing could keep it sealed: a ritual. Some translations called it the strangling ritual, others called it the rope shrine maiden ritual. Either way, it required a sacrifice, and here's how it worked.
Originally,
A girl would be chosen at birth, and she was called the rope shrine maiden, and she wouldn't be raised like a normal child. She wouldn't be allowed to make friends or go to school. She would have no connection to the outside world, remaining in a hidden room in that mansion. And she would be put in this small, quiet space tucked away in the roof where she would be completely isolated. In her entire life, she would be told one thing: you were born for this. Your purpose is to protect everyone. And for years, 15, sometimes 16 years, she would be prepared, conditioned to believe that this was normal, that this was the honorable thing to do with her life. And she would be fed just enough to survive, taught prayers she wouldn't fully understand, told that her pain would be temporary, that her sacrifice would protect the family, the village, everyone. The ritual required something very specific. She had to die without any emotional attachments, without fear, without experiencing love. Because if she felt even a flicker of emotion at the end, the seal wouldn't hold. The gate would crack, and whatever was on the other side would bleed through. And when the time came, the family would gather. Not just the parents, everyone: extended family, priests, witnesses from the village, anyone who had a role to play. They would dress in white ceremonial robes and lead the girl down to an enormous chamber deep beneath the mansion, carved into rock, lit only by candles. Now, at the center of this chamber was a stone platform, worn smooth by centuries of use. It was the rope altar, and around it, carved into the floor, was a circle. They were deep grooves, channels for drainage, stained dark with blood from past sacrifices. And they would ask the young rope shrine maiden to ascend the platform, and she would do so obediently. When they told her to extend her arms, she would comply, and the family would begin to prepare the ropes. And the ropes they used weren't ordinary. They were sacred Shinto ropes, shimenawa, meant to mark spiritual boundaries. Made from rice straw, they were thick and rough. The priests would take the ropes and tie them around her wrists, and each loop would make the fibers cut deeper into her skin. Then they would wrap her ankles so she couldn't run, she couldn't kick. And then, the worst part, they would tie ropes around her neck. Not a noose that would tighten and suffocate her right away. More like a collar that would tighten with every breath. And the ropes were then tied to oxen, placed at 5 separate points, connected to her head and her limbs. The priests would step back, and the head of the family, usually the eldest male, would begin to chant. The prayers were in Old Japanese, archaic words that even modern speakers wouldn't recognize. The rhythm was so steady, almost hypnotic, it could send you into a trance. And with each verse, the oxen would be guided to move. Not all at once, but slowly, each pulling in a different direction, causing the ropes to tighten around the girl's flesh. The ritual was meant to take hours, and the separation had to be gradual. At first, the ropes would just tighten, and she would feel the pressure on her wrists, in her ankles, around her neck. But then the ropes would start cutting into her skin, and that's when the panic would set in. She would start to struggle, twist, and try to loosen the ropes. Her survival instincts kicking in. But the more she resists, the tighter the knots would become. She would try to scream, but the rope around her neck would choke her. And through all of this, the family would just keep chanting. They weren't sadistic. They weren't enjoying her pain. They justified this cruelty because it served a greater purpose. But regardless, the horror of that situation was the same. So when they heard her desperate screams, they didn't flinch because they didn't see her as a person anymore. She was a vessel, a lock on a door that had to stay closed. With each prayer, the oxen would move a little further and the ropes would pull a little tighter. Her wrists would start to dislocate and her ligaments would tear. And through it all, she would be conscious, feeling every second of it. They say that in the final moments, when the ropes had been pulled as far as they could go, something would shift. The temperature in the room would drop, the candles would flicker, and then, with one final pull, the ropes would do their job. Her limbs would separate from her body. Her head was pulled off. And when it was over, when her body, what was left of it, was still, the family would gather the ropes because those blood soaked ropes were the seal to the Hell Gate. And so the gate would hold and the family would be safe, but only for the next 50 years. According to the game's lore, the Himuro family had performed this ritual for centuries, and it had always worked until it didn't. In 1837, something went terribly wrong. The last rope shrine maiden was a girl named Kirie. Like the others, she was raised in isolation. But a few weeks before the ritual was supposed to take place, she met someone. Through the window, she spotted a young man who had come to the mansion on business. She gained permission to go outside briefly, and the two met. They shared a conversation. Kirie was elated. For the first time, she felt seen. She felt understood, maybe even loved. And then the family found out, and they panicked because if Kirie had formed an attachment, if she felt love or fear or anything, the ritual wouldn't work. So they did what they thought they had to do. They had the young man killed, and they told Kirie he had left. They insisted that the two had not shared a real connection, that he had just been leading her on. And they thought that would be enough, that she would go back to being completely void of emotion. But emotions don't work that way, because even though he was gone, she still yearned for that connection. And when the day of the ritual came, when they tied her up and began chanting, she didn't resist. Not because of her conditioning, but because she was heartbroken. Everything went as usual. Her body was torn to pieces,
Uh-huh.
her blood filling the circle carved into the stone, and the ropes were used to secure the gate.
Yeah.
But what they didn't know is that the ritual had failed. No one could
Yeah.
tell, not until strange things started to happen. At
Really?
first, it was seemingly small things, things you could easily brush off. Door locks clicking into place on their own, and
Mm-hmm.
windows that wouldn't open. Rooms would grow cold without warning, even in the height of summer. Not a draft, not a breeze, just a sudden unnatural chill. But then people started disappearing without a trace. Not all at once, just one at a time. They would be there 1 second, gone the next. Their belongings were still in their rooms. There were no signs of a struggle, and there was no evidence that they had left the mansion. And that was strange and scary. But then bodies actually started to drop. Family members were found strangled, bound, hanging from the ceilings in locked rooms. And no doors were forced, no windows broken. The rooms were sealed from the inside.
Also,
And then everywhere they looked, they would find lengths of blood-stained rope, the kind used in the ritual, hanging from the beams, coiled around handrails. And they were moving, tightening and loosening like invisible hands were testing them. The family packed up what they could carry and tried to escape, but every attempt failed. No matter which door they used, they ended up back inside. The
yeah.
hallways seemed to bend, staircases led nowhere. They couldn't seem to cross this threshold. It was as if something was holding them hostage. Weeks passed and no one came or went. And when neighbors in that remote location finally forced their way inside, drawn by silence, by the lack of comings and goings, they found the house still, eerily still. They found 17 bodies, all strangled with ligature marks on their necks and limbs. No one had survived, or so they thought. Remember Kirie, the girl who was sacrificed to seal the Hellgate? She was found in the ritual chamber, still bound by the ropes, still bleeding out. But her eyes were wide open, and she was smiling. Now, here's where the story gets a little complicated because everything I just told you, that's a plot from a video game, which means it's fiction, a ghost story told through gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
But people started believing in it. Forums blew up with discussion threads, and people started sharing evidence. Grainy photos of an abandoned mansion that supposedly matched the game's design. Stories from people who claim their relatives had heard about a place
Now
like
that
this in
is
rural
something.
Japan. Some said the mansion was outside Tokyo. Others said Kyoto. Some claimed it was in the mountains near Hokkaido. But no one could agree on a location. No one could find official records. But the legend took on a life of its own. In 2008, a user on a Japanese paranormal forum posted a thread. I think I found Himuro Mansion. They claimed they had been hiking in the mountains when they stumbled upon an old estate. The front gate had a symbol carved into it, a circle with intersecting lines. They even posted photos, grainy and blurry, but in them you could see the gate, the overgrown garden, the outline of a building in the background. But you couldn't see inside. The user said they tried to approach the front door, but every time they got close, they felt this overwhelming sense of dread. Not fear exactly, but just like something was off. So they left, promising to come back with better equipment. But they never posted again. So we don't know what happened to them. Did they really go there? Did they disappear? We don't know. Other users tried to verify the location, GPS coordinates, landmarks, anything. But the thread was deleted within a week, and the account was gone, and no one has been able to find that estate since.
Hmm. He's the guy.
Then in 2015, a woman in her 30s contacted a paranormal investigator. She said she'd been having the same dream for 6 months. She was in a traditional Japanese mansion with long hallways and traditional Japanese sliding doors. She was looking for someone, a child. Every night, the dream got longer and more detailed. She could describe the layout of this house, the light filtering in through the washi paper screens, the smell of incense, and even the pattern on the edges of the tatami mats. And every night, she got closer to finding this child. But she also began to notice something else: the ropes. They were everywhere, hanging over doorways, from the rafters, from the stairs. In the final dream, the one that made her reach out for help, she finally found the child. A teenage girl, whimpering in the corner of an empty room in the attic. She seemed to have been bound with ropes, and there were burn marks on her wrists, ankles, and even her neck. The woman said the girl seemed to be shivering with fear, so she went up to her and stroked her head. But when the girl looked up at her, even with blood streaming down her face, she was smiling. And the woman would suddenly feel this pressure around her neck, like something choking her, and she would wake up in a cold sweat. The investigator asked her, "Have you ever heard of Himuro Mansion?" She said no. She'd never played Fatal Frame, never read the forums, never heard about the legend. But the details that she described matched perfectly. So, how do you explain that? People who played Fatal Frame, especially late at night alone, started reporting the same recurring dream. They would be walking through a traditional Japanese house with long hallways lined with sliding doors. At the end of the hallway, there was always a room, a door that wouldn't open. And if you pressed your ear up against it, you could hear something: strained breathing and soft whimpering sounds. Sometimes they'd report hearing a girl's voice, soft, timid, and polite. "Please help me. Let me out." And here's the part that's really strange. Some of these people, completely independently across different countries, reported waking up with marks on their wrists. Was it mass hysteria from playing a horror game before bed? Well, maybe. Over time, people added new layers: alleged body counts, deleted forum threads, dream stories, and even claims of waking up with rope marks. But none of those details come with verifiable sources. But although the authenticity of these claims are debatable, the reports kept coming in, and all describing the same thing. So, here's what we know for sure. The "based on a true story" tagline was only added to the North American release. The Japanese version didn't have it, nor did the European version. It was a marketing decision. In the early 2000s, the Blair Witch Project had just blown up. It had blurred the line between fiction and reality in a way audiences had never seen before. The film was presented as recovered footage of 3 missing students, and the marketing leaned into that illusion: fake police reports, documentary specials, even listing the actors as missing online. So, for a brief moment, people genuinely questioned whether it was real. And it wasn't, but it proved something powerful. If you frame horror as truth, even just slightly, audience will lean in. The found footage angle was huge. It made the movie feel visceral and terrifying. And someone involved with the release, probably during localization, thought, what if we did the same thing? So they added those 5 words on the cover: "based on a true story." And it worked. The game hit record sales. People talked about it. Forums exploded with discussions trying to figure out if this was real. But the developers never claimed it was real. In interviews, they talked about the architectural research they did, the history they pulled from, the way they designed Himuro Mansion to feel authentic. But Himuro Mansion itself, the family, the strangling ritual, all fiction. A horror story told through a video game. Because Himuro Mansion doesn't exist as a place you can actually visit. It exists in the space between belief and pure fiction, real enough to feel true, unverifiable enough to stay mysterious. And maybe that's the point, because history is full of rituals we don't talk about, sacrifices made in the name of protection, people who were hurt, killed, erased, all because someone decided their suffering served a greater purpose.
Yep.
Whether this specific story is real or not doesn't change the fact that those ideas are real. And you know what? Honestly, I still can't shake the feeling that something like this could have happened. The human
I could
sacrifice,
see
the
that as well.
ritual, the conditioning, none of that requires the supernatural. People have done
Yep.
worse for less. We just don't always have the records. And I think maybe that's why so many people believed it. Because apart from the Hellgate and the spirits, what humans are capable of, what lengths they will go to for a greater cause, that's the real horror of the story. That part doesn't need a ghost to be terrifying. So, if you've ever had dreams about places that don't exist, or if you've come across other urban legends that blur the line between fiction and reality, please leave a comment. I would love to hear your stories. So, that's pretty much the end of today's story. Until next time, sleep well, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
One, that was incredible. That was so incredible. And also, it's also about my favorite game series, Fatal Frame. But I am curious though, even though the game came out pretty old, but I'm curious about it. Is this mansion real or not? I imagine more curious than anything else. But also, in my own opinion, if it is true about this mansion being real, hmm, rituals are very unique. In my own opinion, this ritual is so fucked up. Torturing a poor girl for the greater good is already fucked up it is. So I can't exactly blame them for dying in the end. But also, really, killing the person is not going to help things either. The girl has always been ruined. So best bet is to try again. You know, just like how I had to make sure my herbs are dry but not spoiled. If it's spoiled, then I cannot use it. So I have to use a different method. That's what they should have done. Now, I know what I'm saying is still fucked up, but still, they should have even did that in the first place. I mean, seriously, that's not good either way. So, in my opinion, no wonder a ritual failed. Seriously. But also, I do feel bad for the girl as well. In my in my own opinion, if the mansion in Japan, Hidemo mansion was real, I'm curious, why not appease the rope maiden, appease her, maybe make her more happy. I could feel like maybe since she still wants that connection, get her a doll that looks like the person that she has a connection with. If that mansion is real, I'm more curious about it. Is it real? Or maybe it's just a game that everyone loves. Either way, I'm more curious about it than anything else. And trust me, my curiosity is peaked for this game. But also, if this game is based on a true story, what about the other games from Fatal Frame? Are they true or not? I'm more curious. But in my opinion, even though I did not, I watch people play this game, but in my own opinion, watching it, not playing it. So maybe, and I never had that dream while being off the fear from this game. But what about you guys? Have you had dreams similar accounts on this video? Because if you did, this is not only towards YouTubers, but also VTuber as well. If you had dreams like the accounts from Fatal Frame 1 or the other Fatal Frames games, please let me know. I would love to hear about it. But for now, I'm more curious about if this game, based on a true story, is it real or fake? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Paranormal research is still developing today. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll find out if this mansion is real or not. But I better get going. I got another spooky music review to do soon. So, until then, don't forget to. Oh, and before I forget, I highly recommend you to go play the game of Fatal Frame if you like horror. And one, and this game is actually top notch. Or go check out Beauty and the Beast. She does a wonderful job creating spooky tales, legends, and everything spooky. And give her some spooky love from this Halloween spirit. But until then, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay spooky, my friends.